All right, here's the deal. Some people have requested, they said, Shank, I want you to do some, I'm not taking a dump by the way, I'm just trying to get in the camera here. Shank, we want you to do some exercise videos. So I said, okay, let me do an exercise video. Let me start with something cool. So I'm going to do an exercise video on how to properly do and why you should do a Bulgarian split squat. Now let me qualify this first off. We're not taking the name Bulgaria out of this thing. I know there's some people out there like, oh no, I'm sick of calling stuff. Let's call it the RF, rear foot elevated split squat. No, we're not. That's stupid. That sounds like something you'd see. That sounds like an ingredient on the back of like a bottle of shampoo. We're not calling it the rear foot elevated split squat. We're calling it the Bulgarian split squat. Number one, because it's from Bulgaria. Number two, Bulgaria is awesome. If you got the name Bulgarian something, why the hell would you take it out? All right? If someone invented a bicycle with a Mongolian bicep curl, would you take Mongolia out of it? No, because Mongolia is awesome too. So knock it off. It's the Bulgarian split squat. It's where it's from. Stop trying to turn everything into some kind of sanitized scientific exercise. Right? Get that off my chest right there. Someone the other day said, Shank, you're like Lewis Black. You're so angry with your personal training. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So let's move forward amicably. So this is the Bulgarian split squat, you rear foot elevated split squat, whatever. The Bulgarian split squat. Here we go. Okay, my rear foot is elevated on this box. Notice it's not elevated on that chair. It's elevated on this box. I will get into the details of that in a little bit. Okay, my toes are either curled under or pushed over like this. Some clients I know who have issues with their toes, they have a hard time folding their foot like this, so we have them put their foot flat. Other people feel a lot more balance and leverage. I actually feel a lot more balance and leverage here. I actually feel the exercise can do what it's supposed to do when my foot is curled under like this. What do I mean by that? What I mean is 3/4 of your weight should be in your front leg. Right? This, like all split squat and lunging patterns, is about weight distribution, about weight transfer. That's when my back heel is elevated and my front heel is flat. Right? I need that back foot to transfer 3/4. So 1/4 of my weight's in my back leg, 3/4 is in my front leg. It's a huge thing. That's why we lunge in the first place. If it was 50-50, it would just be an awkward squat. Right? Let me go do some awkward squats. No. It's a Bulgarian split squat. It is a lunge pattern. Right? So I want to have that weight transfer. So now I've transferred 1/4. And some people are like, oh, it's 80-20. Like it's 70-30. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just get the damn weight transfer. Right? It's not a single leg squat where it's 100-0 either. That's a whole different exercise. Right? So this is a rear foot elevated split squat, 70-30, 80-20, 75-25, whatever. I've only rambled on long enough. Get to the goddamn point. Okay. Toe spread, weight over the center of the foot, pushing straight down for balance. All I'm going to do is with 3/4 of the weight over my front leg, I'm going to squat down. Now the torso angle can matter. Typically when people are more upright, they tend to feel this exercise more in the front of the thigh. When people tend to keep a straight spine, they don't turn into this. When they keep a straight spine and they lean forward more at the hip joint, they tend to feel this exercise more in the glute. It tends to be more hip dominant versus more thigh dominant. That's the basic way you do the exercise. Right? That's it. If you want to load it, there's a wide variety of ways to load it, some more specific to certain activities than others. The first thing I want clients to be able to do is to be able to do this exercise for 10 reps with body weight without losing their balance. Then, once they can do that, typically what I do is I have them hold a dumbbell in the hand of the leg that is forward. Once they can do X amount of pounds with that, depending on the person, I'll have them hold 2 dumbbells in their hands. And then, if they have the shoulder health for it, I'll have them hold the dumbbell up at their shoulder. If they can do that, I have them hold 2 dumbbells up at their shoulders. If their goals or their desire dictates it, I can have them hold weights overhead, especially if they have the mobility for it. They really want to turn this into a core and a balance fest. So that's it. That's the Bulgarian split squat. Rear foot elevated, 3/4 weight on the front foot, weight over the center of the front foot. That's why the back heel is elevated and the front heel is flat. There's one thing you get that right. Back heel elevated, front foot flat. Back heel elevated, front foot flat. All right? I'm doing this on purpose, by the way, because if you keep the weight over the center of the front foot, you'll be able to balance for a pretty long time. You'll do whatever the hell you want and still have balance on this exercise. Right? Usually clients that are falling all over the place is because the weight isn't over the center of the front foot, so they can't balance. Right? So I'm just going to squat down and up. taking about 2 to 3 times as long to go down as it takes me to go up. So 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3 down, and 1 second up. Okay. That's the exercise. That is the Bulgarian split squat, aka the rear foot elevated split squat. It's pretty simple. Back heel elevated, front heel flat. Why? You've got 3/4 of your weight in your front foot, which means the amount of load that that leg has to distribute is way more than it normally would in a squat, where the weight is 50-50. So, well, you foot fetish people get really excited right now. Actually, this would be more of a shoe fetish anyway, so whatever. So by keeping the weight over the center of the foot, right here, the midpoint between the heel and the ball of the foot. The midpoint of the foot is not between the toes and the heel. It's between the ball of the foot and the heel, right? By keeping the weight over the midpoint of the foot, you have balance. This is very important. You do not want the weight to shift backwards. Unless you're training for some very specific reason, you don't want the weight to shift forwards. A lot of times you'll hear strength coaches scream, weight in the heels, weight in the heels, weight in the heels. The reason why good strength coaches do that is they realize whoever the individual athlete they're coaching is shifting too much weight into the front of their foot. They tend to be more quad dominant, right? So if you start putting more stress in the front of the foot, it puts more load on the quad. Why is that a problem? It also greatly increases the amount of pressure inside the knee joint. Likewise, if you rock too far back in the heel, it's going to increase the amount of pressure in the hip, but it's also going to put a lot more strain on the back, in my experience. You want to keep the foot centered. Right? Better balance means you can lift more load. If you're training as an elite level athlete and you're trying to train specific for something like skating or running or whatever it is, and for some reason you go on the ball foot, that's fine. I told you yesterday it's not who I train. Right? Remember, the whole purpose of me teaching these exercises is this works the front of the thigh, which is one of the 7 major muscle groups. It also works a lot on balance. It also works a lot on body awareness. It also works a lot towards the goal of being physically independent for as long as possible, since people who have bad backs or people who want to be able to be more mobile getting up and down the ground, they tend to be better. Here's a nice little nugget of information in all my ranting. They tend to be better squatting to seats, but split squatting down to the floor and then getting down to this position. Puts a lot less pressure on their back. Their back is able to stay neutral in that way. It's a lot more easier to keep your back neutral when you split squat to the ground versus trying to squat to the ground, especially if you have let me get a little further back so you can see this. Instead of squatting to the ground, which can cause a lot more pressure on the back, especially if somebody is symptomatic, okay? I squat like Slav, right? It causes a lot more pressure here, whereas by split squat, my spine can stay much more effectively neutral, okay? Again, like most of my videos, it's them ranting all over the place, so just deal with it. I'll put timestamps on it so you can figure it out. What else on my phone? So again, that front foot is very important to keep the weight over the center of the shoe, all right? You don't want your foot to roll in. You don't want it to roll out. You don't want it to go forward. You don't want it to go back. Why? You lose balance. Why? When the foot is spread like that, you have a very wide table. So in case you do roll or lose your balance, you're not just going to keel over if it's really narrow. A lot of people who have really bad balance, they curl their toes like a gargoyle, right? And so what happens is, look at the amount of surface area I have now on the ground. Not very much. So God forbid I roll, I'm going to fall over very easy, right? But if I have very wide surface, so I spread my toes and I push my foot down and the weight goes right to the center, I have balance because I have a wider surface area. The other thing is, your foot is designed to distribute load, not create it, right? That's why cavemen don't beat each other to death with toes and spinal columns. They beat each other to death with thigh bones and shin bones because they're rigid levers designed to create force. Your foot isn't designed to generate a ton of force. So if your toes are spread and the weight is over the center of the foot, all that load, especially in an exercise where 3/4 of your weight is in one leg versus the other, gets more evenly distributed out. So one of the problems is people get all excited about when someone's knee goes over the toe. So when you see someone do this, they automatically assume that this is a guaranteed knee injury. But what they're not asking is, it doesn't necessarily matter where the knee is relative to the toes. It matters where the load is going through the foot. If the weight of the load is going through the center of my foot, my knees can go pretty far over my toes. And the amount of pressure inside my knee joint itself is going to be minimalized. Right? That's why you can see Olympic weightlifters, all types of athletes. You can see me do that squat on the floor. My knees don't hurt because, again, the weight's over the center of my foot, which means any load that I generate, whether it's a barbell on my back, a dumbbell on my chest, or in a split squat, is going to be distributed enough that my knee can handle it. The problem is, you see a lot of people, and that's why strength coaches say over and over, weight in the heels, weight in the heels, weight in the heels, is if you tend to shift too much weight in the front of the foot, now all of a sudden when that knee does go over that toe, especially when they're under load, the amount of actual pressure in the actual knee joint increases to the degree it can cause injury or chronic inflammation and pain. Right? So you want to make sure the weight, again, and you also want to balance your falling all over the place. And you can't lift a single of weight, which again we talked about the other day, is exercises need to be progressively loaded over time. So if you're falling all over the place, how the hell are you going to progressively load an exercise? You can't. You're better off being on a leg extension than doing this to build muscle. But then you lose all the benefits of this sucker, like I just showed you, getting up, down, off the ground. So that's the first thing, is you want to make sure you keep a stable foot. And you do that by spreading the toes, putting weight over the center of the foot relative heel to ball, and as you squat, not allowing your foot to do this. Now, when you see people do this a lot, they have what I call as an uneducated hip. You say, why do you have an uneducated hip? Why isn't it an uneducated foot? You know, and you see people, it's like one of these, the horses out of the barn, and they're closing the barn door after the horse has gotten out. You see them doing this with their hands when they split squat. That's a bad idea, all right? It's like rearranging what did the guy say in Fight Club? It's like rearranging the deck furniture on the Titanic as it goes down, right? How this works is, and right now I hear Martina sitting here going, I can't get the point. There's so many points here. I've already gotten points. That's the rear foot elevated split squat, right? So I'm just going off on a rant of points here. That's why I put, the timestamps in. If you split squat and your foot starts rolling like this, you just took half of the surface area you have to balance and half of the available ability for you to distribute load into the ground, not into your joints, and you just said bye-bye to it. Same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. Again, if you have a centered foot with a spread toe and the weight's over the middle of the foot, it really doesn't matter how far out your knee goes. The load, even if it's 3/4 of your body weight, which it should be in a rear foot elevated split squat, is going to be distributed out through the entire foot. Your body can handle that. And you have balance because now you're balancing on the entire surface of the foot instead of portions of it. The reason why I call that a smart hip and not a dumb foot is think about the foot and the hip like a business relationship, right? The foot is the frontline employees. And what they're basically doing is they're giving the management of the hip feedback as to what's happening on the ground floor. And if the foot rolls in this way, it's essentially telling the hip, look, you just took away 50% of my balance, 50% of my load distribution, so now I'm going to fall, injure my knee, and I'm not going to be able to lift any load that's going to be heavy enough for me to get stronger, build muscle at. Give me some adjustment. So what does the hip do? It tells, basically, it contracts certain muscles to level the foot out. In this case, it would work more the muscles of the outside of the thigh. Likewise, if the employee, aka the foot, rolls this way, it's basically giving the hip who's up in upper management up in the office, it's saying, hey, I'm rolling on the outside of my foot, I've lost 50% of my balance, 50% of my ability to create force, 50% of my ability to distribute force and evenly throughout my body, give me some muscular help to balance me out. So then it would use your inner thigh. Likewise, if you go on the front of the foot, it would use the hip in the back to level you out. And if you go on the back of the foot, it would use the quad in the front of the hip to level you out. So it's this relationship between the hip and the foot that helps you get balance. The foot gives the hip the information. The hip then contracts the muscles up here to get the foot, or anywhere down below the lower leg, but it's mainly through the hip in most people, to create the right response. If the foot rolls this way, you again want to use the outer thigh to get you this way. If it rolls this way, you want to use the inner thigh to get you that way. And just it does that. And what you'll see in clients over time is, as you train them, and they get better and better at keeping the weight over the center of the foot, keeping the toes spread, pushing down through that center of the foot, and their hip becomes smarter, every time their foot rolls for whatever reason, right, which is going to happen every now and then when you're on one foot, the hip is going to give the appropriate feedback. The problem is most people is they don't have a very good relationship between their hip and their foot, so they swing their arms all over the place. I was just reading a history book about it. It talked about how in World War II, one of the biggest things that took out the Germans, the Japanese, and the Italians was they didn't trust each other, and no one in their armies trusted them. That all the underlings and soldiers were afraid that they gave Hitler or Hirohito, or it wasn't exactly him, I can't remember, it was the General Tojo, I think his name was. If they gave, or Mussolini, if they gave any of them the wrong information, they would be killed. If they told them something they didn't want to hear, they'd just be executed, right? So what happened was the foot, in that case, the ground soldier, was never giving upper management the right information to make the right adjustments. So if there was a bad plan, they just kept going after the bad plan because everyone was too afraid to be honest with anybody because they knew they'd get killed, right? That's what you don't want to do with your foot. Your foot gives your hip information. Your hip then, if it's a smart hip, will contract the right muscles to adjust the position so you can stay balanced on that foot. So that's one long rant on the whole idea of the foot. And if you suck at balance, one of the best things you can do is when you're at home, I'll go on a whole rant sometime other time about shoeless weightlifting in commercial gyms. Just stand in front of a mirror, or don't even need a mirror. Spread your toes, push into the ground, don't be a gargoyle, push into the ground and get the weight over the center of the foot and just practice with those spread toes, and practice balancing on one foot. This plus leg extensions would be a nice prerequisite to a Bulgarian split squat, in this case, a regular split squat. Because now all of a sudden, I'm now training my hip. If I roll on the outside of my foot, my inner thigh goes, nope, there's 100% of load distribution and balance. If I roll on the inside, my butt goes, nope, and now all of a sudden, I'm at 100% of my potential balance, my 100% of my load distribution, and 100% of my ability to dissipate force through my joints. So that's one thing that comes up with this exercise. And if you don't have balance on this exercise, it becomes pretty much worthless because you can never handle enough load or complexity of movement to get much benefit out of it. So that's one thing. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, this is another thing that really gets my nipples all twisted. Please note what I'm using in this exercise is this short box, all right? One of the things that drives me nuts, especially when people do this with, or just regular everyday people do this, unless you have wicked hip mobility, a lot of which has huge genetic determinants, and by the time you're 40 and 50 years old, it has a lot of structural determinants. Yes, you can improve it. Don't listen to the personal trainer who acts like he's the walking embodiment of Christ that can fix everything, because he can't. Because if he was that good of a trainer, some country like Saudi Arabia, they wouldn't just start their own golf league. They would hire him and he'd make all their athletes Olympic gold medalists. All right? Another angry rant by me. You don't have the hip mobility in order to be able to do this exercise on a very high surface. So unless I'm training someone with wicked hip mobility, unless I'm training someone who has a sport-specific goal where they need to be able to put their back foot up over their head, I never do a rear foot elevated split squat on a bench. I always do it on like a Reebok step that's maybe 1 or 2 steps high, or like a box like this, never more than like 4, 6, 8 inches high. I discovered this by accident because clients they couldn't keep their spine stable while they were split squatting. And some of them, no matter how much I tried to do my corrective hip mobilities and spine stability, I'm a corrective trainer, I'm magic. It just couldn't get the exercise right. And what happened was I just stopped doing it on benches. Unless I had people who could do it while keeping their core stable and had the hip mobility for it. And then years ago, I read this article by this guy named Kim Goss. And he actually had the inventor of the Bulgarian Split Squat, this guy Spazov, who was Bulgarian, go figure. He had him come into his gym and Spazov spazzed out. Spazov spazzed. And he went nuts because Goss had all his guys doing the exercise on a bench. And Spazov was like, look, it's only supposed to be done at a 4 to 6 inch height. And you may say, why? Well, not only just because of the hip mobility, but remember, the whole point of the exercise, the whole point of elevating the rear foot is not to be cool. Right? Yeah, it makes you cool. But the whole point of the rear foot elevation is to, again, shift more of the weight into that front foot, since that's the whole purpose of all split squat and lunging activities is that weight transfer. That's why you do them. Right? They train the body to do weight transfer. Why? Why is that important? Well, especially with Olympic weightlifters. They've been doing the same barbell exercise for a long time. Your body has dominant patterns. Eventually, you start shifting more weight to one side. One leg becomes more dominant than the other. Look at professional baseball. How many truly great switch hitters have ever been in professional baseball? My knowledge, I think Tim Raines was the only guy, and I'm going to get this wrong because I haven't looked at this in a long time, but I think he batted .296 on each side of the plate, right? That's very rare. If you think of all the guys who played baseball, there just haven't been that many. Eddie Murray, Chipper Jones, Mickey Mantle. There just haven't been that many guys who have been great switch hitters. So people would develop patterns, and then you're lifting the same barbell, the same bilateral barbell over and over again. They were losing the weights because they had muscle imbalances between side to side. Well, what better exercise to do than an exercise that transfers 3/4 of the weight from one leg to the other? It helps get rid of those. You shouldn't get rid of the imbalances, but it helps minimize them so you don't lose your balance, especially when you're doing heavy barbell lifts. That's one of the hugest things on this exercise, is that
does the weight transfer, so one leg gets emphasized over the other. So if one leg is stronger than the other, it can catch up. And people say, well, Shane, why don't you do a single leg extension? And that would be fine if the issue was in terms of just muscular development. In fact, it'd probably be more ideal if you had one quad, one thigh muscle bigger than the other. The problem is when you're using the Bulgarian split squat is because you're on your feet and you're integrating the hip and the thigh together. If the imbalance is a matter of it's a functional imbalance in terms of you're moving up and down through space using multiple joints at the same time, a leg extension it's only going to fix one small part of that equation, and how the whole system communicates together in a quote-unquote more functional movement, it's not going to work very well. So that's where the idea of the rear foot elevated split squat comes from, is that rear foot shifts, it ensures that 3/4 of that weight gets shifted on that front foot. So the exercise does what it's supposed to do in the first place, and that's what it was designed to do, was help work on muscle imbalances. And people have been doing bilateral exercise for a long time, and the natural neurological dominance of one side versus the other gets a little less imbalanced, so they don't start losing their ability to do their exercise. And you'll see that a lot in athletes who have dominant patterns. This exercise can be very valuable for that matter. So that's another big thing is again, unless somebody has the mobility for it, start doing your split squats on a lower surface. It just doesn't have to be that high to get what the intent of the exercise was in the first place, and that's to elevate that rear foot and shift it forward. So I don't know what else I want to talk about here. I know I talked about how the more upright the torso is, I'll do it without the boxes. So the more upright the torso is, the more likely is it's going to be more working the quad half of the quad glute relationship here. The more lean forward is more it's going to be working the glute half of the glute quad relationship here. How would I progress people on this exercise? Well, someone's really not that great at this movement. What I would do is have them start doing leg extensions to help build up general muscular strength and coordination in the muscle group. Another thing I would have them do is work on a glute bridge progression, where I don't know if you can see this, I hope you can see it, but I'd have them start off with a bilateral glute bridge, and then once they can do this exercise and keep their spine stable and move exclusively through the hips, knees, and ankles, and feel the exercise in the butt and not the low back, and feel the exercise in the butt and not the hamstrings. Then I have them progress to a double leg up, single leg down. I want to make sure the core doesn't twist. And if they can lift that foot up without looking like a washing machine, I have them do the negative only all the way down. Now again, don't let the torso twist. Don't lose the qualitative nature of the exercise. It still should be glutes number one, hamstrings a distant second, calves, not much at all, and definitely no low back. The core should be tight, and all the motion should be around the hips, knees, and ankles. And then when they go here, it shouldn't all of a sudden have all the stress go back into the hamstring. If it isn't, they're just probably not ready for this progression yet. So I have them then lower it down with one leg, up with two, and then when they can do this effectively without allowing their hips to twist, without getting the stress to go from their glutes into their hamstrings and quads, then I just have them do, especially here I'll do it to stabilize, a single leg glute bridge just like that. And then just like teaching kids how to read, you teach them the alphabet, then you teach them how to put the words together, the letters together to create words. I then start them on a deloaded split squat. Either I have them hold on to a TRX or hold on to a bar. The Smith machine is one of the best places to do this. But if you're working at home, you just put your hands up against, you'd be like Blondie, right, in that album. Was it Heart of Glass where they were getting arrested? I can't remember. I'll look it up later. But you put your hands up against the wall like this, and there's your balance component. Eventually, you would wind up taking one hand off, and then you take the other hand off. All right? Again, over time. So I start very simple. I start very isolated with things like leg extensions, single leg glute bridges. After, and I can't say, well, how long is the tank shake? I have no idea. I have no idea who the person is you're talking about. But after a period of time, when their quads can handle loading and their glutes can handle loading, and they can develop basic principles, like the basic principle of the alphabet of core control and muscle development in their legs, then I have them probably still do those exercises, but a couple days a week, I'll have them do some split squat variation where they're stabilized. First hand to come off is going to be the hand of the front leg. Some clients who want to specifically focus on muscle size, a lot of times I'll have them just do a supported, weighted split squats. This is another little neat thing. Say, for example, you really want to build muscle, and you got decent balance, but you just want to be able to handle a really heavy load. A lot of times I have these people have them hold a weight in the front hand here, right, with the leg that's forward, and have them stabilize their body and their balance. That way they get a little extra balance, and they can load the leg as heavy as they want. Typically with your more athletic populations, that's not an issue, but you'll see a lot of times bodybuilders will do this exercise, say in a Smith machine, for that exact reason. You're getting the weight distribution, but you're not having to go too crazy with the balance, which could negatively affect either the mental load you're lifting or the mind-muscle connection you're making, because you're busy trying not to fall all over the place. For me, it's not an issue because it's so automatic at this point, I don't think it really matters. So I talked about the height of the box, which really makes me upset. I talked about the foot. I showed you how to do the exercise. I know this is not going to get a ton of views because all the exercises on YouTube that people do this, it's some like sexy dude with his shirt off, and the video takes like 2 minutes. And he's like, oh, look, this is how you do the exercise in 2 minutes. You know what? I'm just going to do another video where I just demonstrate the rear foot elevated split squat, and then I'm going to put this ranting nightmare that's 25 minutes long on later. What else do I have to say? So yes, so you know it's live. So again, just make sure with these movements, as anything, the core stays tight. Right? The motion should be revolving around the hip, the knee, and the ankle. The core is tight. The weight is shifted forward into that front leg 3/4, not 100-0. That's a single leg squat. It's a different exercise. And just remember, as you go down, this stays stable, so all the motion occurs around the lower body, the hip, knees, and ankles. You don't want to go so low that your back starts rounding under. Why? That's another principle we talked about before. You start moving from active mobility to passive flexibility. Now the weight of your body and gravity is causing your spine to move, not you. You want your active mobility to be around the hips, knees, and ankles. You don't want motion through the low back. Oh, what else do you need to know? This will make a lot more sense when I do the show notes and you can deviate towards specific. There's a lot of good information here. I'm just trying to think about, I talked about why I like this exercise. Again, every routine should be comprised of 7 exercises that work each of the major muscle groups. This one is a very effective one for working the front of the thigh and the glute, provided you have the ability to do it effectively, and you can load this in a lot of different ways. I've already talked about holding a dumbbell or a kettlebell or a bag of rocks down at your sides, and then you can hold the weight here. You put a barbell on your back. I talked about the real value of it is that it helps you work on leg strength and balances. I've talked about the value of it as a functional pattern. They have the idea of getting up and down off the ground. I'm not a big fan of this whole idea that it's sports specific. I've been an athlete, well, I was an athlete, now I'm just Coach Joe DeFranco, I'm just a washed up meathead. But I gotta tell you what, I've never seen an athlete go down the field with their foot on a box or a bench, 3/4 of weight in the front foot, and go down the field like this. Coach, I'm open. Yeah, but you're on the other side of the field. It doesn't matter that you're open, all right? I've never seen an athlete play a sport like this. I see merry-go-round horses do this. So if you're a merry-go-round horse, this might be a sport-specific way to train. But really the huge value of it is again, you know what another value of it is? It helps clients work on creating stability and balance in this what's called the frontal plane. So this is sagittal, this is frontal, and this is transverse. This exercise does a lot, like a bilateral squat, I find helps people a lot with stability going this way. But it doesn't do a ton, unless you're lifting a really heavy weight and you're really messed up. It doesn't do a ton of stability work this way. I find the split squat, because now you don't have this other leg to balance you out, because you have that weight distribution. I find that people have to work a lot harder to stabilize their core in this direction. So it's a very valuable exercise for that. Valuable exercise for getting them down off the floor. What else? Look, if you like doing it off the bench and you're happy with it and you're comfortable with it, then I don't care. Kiss my ass. I'm just trying to help you out. I'm not here to start arguments with you. What else? I talked about the foot. I talked about how it's not cool. You should have a Statue of Liberty foot when you do this exercise. I don't mean it's green and the index toe is longer than the big toe because that's sexy to French people for some reason. I don't know. Look that up. It's true. Right? But your foot should be stable. It shouldn't be happy feet. Your foot should be stable when you do this exercise. If you're feeling pain in the back of the back knee, in my experience, there's only 2 causes of that. Number one, the person is putting too much weight over the back leg. Again, they're turning it from a lunge and split squat pattern to an awkward squat. It's not supposed to be 50-50. It's supposed to be 75-25, 70-30, 80-20, whatever floats your boat. As long as there's still some weight in the back leg, distributing load forward. That's why, again, back heel elevated, front heel flat. It's shifting the weight forward. So if there's pain in the back knee, almost always it's because someone either is putting too much weight over the back leg, their back quad is too tight, upon which you just do something like a simple stretch like this to calm the muscle down, all right? Wait, that's not complete. Wait, there's better information I can give you than that. So this would help in the immediate calm the muscle down, not calm with an N like Pan from Human Resources lady, right? This would help calm the muscle down. But ultimately, what I find is if people start going to ranges of motion their body isn't used to because they sit at a desk all day, they're not very athletic. The body responds with pain responses, say, whoa, I'm not quite ready for this yet. In this case, pain isn't always a sign of injury about to happen. It's kind of a warning system. The body says, I think an injury might happen because I'm not used to this range of motion. Stop. So what I find with those people is over time is if I just progress them in a split squat and I just go through progressively bigger and bigger ranges of motion, it coaxes the body on a muscular level. Say, hey, look, I can go in this range of motion and I'm not going to die, right? This is actually okay. Even though I spend all day sitting like this, never in those ranges of motion, I'm almost neurologically training myself to be able to go in those ranges of motion and my brain doesn't see it as a threat. So a lot of times when you feel that pain response, people think it's about a tight muscle, which it very well could be. Or it could be you're training too much weight in the back leg when the weight... Why don't you want to put weight in the back leg? Well, look, you're on the ball of the back foot. What did I just say? The whole purpose of the exercise of the foot is distribute load. Right? So if you've got the back foot on the ball of the foot and you're putting too much weight over it, guess where all that pressure's going? In your knee. Why? Too much weight in the heel is going to go overload the hip. Too much weight in the ball of the foot is going to overload the knee. The back foot by this exercise, by design, has got the rear foot elevated to shift that weight forward. Now all of a sudden you're putting the weight in the front of the foot. What did I already say? The front of the foot, if too much weight in there, the pressure inside the knee joint is going to be increased tremendously. Again, it's not about the knees over the toes. It's about where the load is distributed through the foot that determines how much actual pressure is in the knee, not the geography of the knee. So that's the three things. Number one, they put too much weight over the back leg. Number two, the muscle is stiff. Number three, their body is just not trained to go through those ranges of motion, so it gives it kind of like a pain signal. And look, this is the importance of the Bulgarian split squat. Look what I'm doing right now. I'm shifting all the weight on this one side of my bike, because that's what I do. This is like my motor engram, right? So I said in my videos, you always talk about people to fold their hands like this. And whichever finger on top is their preferred pattern, and then you do this to them and it feels kind of weird, right? So over a lifetime, people develop patterns where they lean more weight on one side or the other. This is where this exercise is very valuable. And in exercise, especially if you do a lot of heavy bilateral work, you'll see over time they develop these very dominant patterns on one side of the body versus the other. This is so not the typical popular YouTube fitness exercise video. This is just me rambling on. But whatever, this is what I do. Someone will edit these one day and they'll actually make sense. So yeah, that's why the back leg hurts. So just use progressive, get the weight shifted properly, right? Calm the muscle down either with foam rolling or stretching, but understand a lot of times that pain response is the body just saying, I'm not used to this range, I'm not ready for this range. So just start with shorter ranges or use a TRX or a bar and a Smith machine. That also will help you deload your body mass a little, which may make the body a little less ornery when you're taking it through a range of motions it's not used to. And you can progress it over time. As far as pressure in the front of the leg, then you get pain in the front knee. It almost always is the weight is distributed wrong over the foot. You're shifting too much weight into the ball of the foot, which is actually increasing pressure inside the knee joint. You're rolling too far on the inside of the foot, which is creating too much pressure on the inside portion of the knee. And the body's giving you a pain response to warn you to stop. There could be structural damage to some people. Some people would have an issue, the torn meniscus, where the knee will lock when they do this, or they could just have, there's this concept of bone on bone, which really doesn't make sense because bones are always touching bones. But the thing is, in the knee joint, there's this stuff called hyaline cartilage, which when the bone touches the bones, makes them not grind into each other, right? So someone may have some kind of arthritic condition where that shiny cartilage, you look to eat chicken, you'll see it on the end of the chicken bone, that shiny cartilage is all worn off, and now there's nothing to allow those joints to smoothly glide. It's bone on bone, but it's smooth, right? It's not bone on bone and grinding. So it could be an underlying structural issue that you can't fix. Then therefore this exercise up to a certain load may not be. Some people may get it to like a 40-pound dumbbell and then all of a sudden they go 50 and the knee starts freaking out. It may not be the right exercise for some people for that matter. Maybe some people need a knee replacement. I don't know. I'm a medical doctor. It's not my field. But that's sometimes the cause. Is there an underlying structural issue? Again, if the weight's going in the front of the foot or inside the foot, stop blaming the goddamn foot. All right? Unless you got some massive bunion, which is like pushing you. It's about the hip. It's about the relationship of the hip. The foot is the employee giving executive management, saying, hey, this is what we need on the ground level. And the executive management figures out the best way to allocate the resources to give the employees what they need to succeed, right? So that's what their smart hip does. The foot rolls one way, the hip contracts certain muscles to balance it out, and vice versa. What else? Talked about the weight distribution, the weight shifting. Not an exercise I'd start most people off with. If I'm training a bunch of young athletes, they may be able to pull this off. But if you're working with someone or you're an individual, and I very much doubt a normal person is going to watch me for 35 minutes talking about a split squat, but if you are a normal person watching this, please understand is it's maybe not the first exercise I'd start most people off with. It's pretty advanced in the sense you're not using a muscle, you're using multiple muscles coordinated together. You're balancing on one foot, you're using process like weight distribution, shifting the weight. You're having to stabilize side to side in planes of motion that most people don't carry buckets of water up hills anymore. Even Jack and Jill struggled with this one. So it's definitely a more advanced exercise. I know some strength coaches that love this exercise, but I would never do leg extensions and single leg glute bridges. What's this guy? All my people start with split squats. Great. You know what? Go start your own country and win all the gold medals, because I don't know what the hell you're doing or who you're training, but that's not true of the people I tend to run into. This is a fairly advanced pattern that people build up to. What else I wanted to bring up for this video? Talk about why the front knee might hurt. And by the way, if you're trying to just build muscle size, this exercise could be completely worthless for you. I've had people who have built fantastic legs, and they've never used this stupid exercise because they hate it, because they're not good at it, and they feel like morons, and they don't want to go through the time to learn the skill of it. I've had people who have had underlying structural issues. This is one of my other rants. I'll go on functional corrective exercise. Who have underlying structural issues where they simply can't load this exercise after a certain point without irritating the hell out of their spine. Look, if you're married to this movement, if you're a functional person who believes in squat, lunge, hinge, yada, 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 you don't want to hear what I just said. But there are some people, especially if they want to build muscle size and development, are a hell of a lot better off doing single leg presses and single leg extensions to work out imbalances in quad mass than doing this stupid exercise, which is stupid for them. I shouldn't say I'm being all negative. Right? Because they're stabilized, and all they have to do is focus on working the muscle and not balancing. And typically, whatever the underlying issue with their spine is, the single leg extension doesn't bother that at all. And if their goal is to build muscle, balance in their thighs, the single leg press doesn't bother that much at all. Probably a lot more than it probably could than the single leg extension, but at least now you're getting the hip into it. If you're training someone to lift heavy weights, the last thing they're going to do after lifting really, really heavy weights is go stabilize and do a split squat. I remember reading an article once where Ed Cohen talked about how he did single leg presses and leg extensions after his heavy squat workout. And I remember I was sitting next to a guy and goes, why would Ed Cohen, the greatest powerlifter ever lived, why would he do single leg presses? Shouldn't he do Bulgarian split squats and slide disc valve slides, which by the way are just furniture movers from Bed Bath and Beyond. Why wouldn't he do slide disc reverse lunges and Bulgarian split squats? That's more functional. Like, the guy just squatted 900 pounds. He's stabilized or exhausted. He's just trying to work on a little muscle strength and balance. Right? He can do that in a single leg press and be fully stabilized, and the muscles he just trashed on the squats are now fully rested. So it's not like this exercise or any exercise, especially when it comes to building muscle, is absolute. I would say for my average everyday clients, which is why I'm putting this 40 minutes into the video, they're never going to get this far, but whatever. This exercise can be very valuable. I almost consider this, up to a point, an essential exercise that the client can do it. Because again, it teaches you that weight shift, which is very important for certain activities of daily living. It teaches that ability to split squat to the ground, which is much easier on your back since you can keep your spine from moving more likely than doing a deep squat. Most people just don't have the hip architecture, the flexibility, the mobility to do it. What else? We're calling it Bulgarian because it's cool. Not turning everything into an acronym that sounds like it belongs in the back of a shampoo bottle. And I really should come into these exercises better prepared these videos, other than my 20 years of experience as a personal trainer, because they'd be a lot more organized and a lot shorter. But let me just think. I don't know. Is there anything you wanted to... Actually, this is what sucks about this. Usually with a client, I can usually bounce something off them for an hour, but there's nothing I can bounce off. There's no one else in this room besides me. Weight distribution. Again, the exercise is not absolute, although it has a lot of value for average everyday people. If you're trying to build muscle, there's a lot of other ways, like the single leg extension, single leg press, that are much actually more effective, that you can load easier and not have to worry about losing balance. I talked about the foot. I talked about how upset I was about the back foot being too elevated. I talked about the whole purpose of the exercise is to, again, reinforce. When you either elevate the back foot or the front foot, really all it's doing is getting you to do the lunge properly, and that's put more weight in the front foot. So when you see people elevate the feet, yes, elevating the back foot tends to put more stress on the front of the thigh. Elevating the front foot tends to put more stress on the glute. The difference is it's all just designed to get you to do the lunge properly in the first place, and that's get that weight distribution. Geez, is there anything else I wanted to talk about? I hope not, because this video will be 3 hours long. Just give me a minute here. You can always fast forward past this if you don't want to see me think. I feel like, who was that girl in Firestarter? The hell was her name? She was in Charlie's Angels. Why am I not remember her name? She was in E.T. She was like addicted to coke when she was like 10. The hell was her name? Whatever, I'm getting old. I can't remember anything anymore. That's about it. So let's just leave it at that. That's the rear foot elevated split squat. I'll stop this right now, and then I'll make another shorter video where I just do the tip. I won't take my shirt off because that's gross. Not at this stage in my life. And I'll just do like a 2-minute video after this on how to do the exercise properly, and then we'll just leave it at that. And I keep saying end, so that means I have nothing left to add. I'm probably going to be at home. I'm probably going to eat my dinner tonight. Like, God damn it, I should have said that. And that's what I get for not preparing for these videos. So that's all. I will see you all later, and thank you very much for tuning in. Goodbye.